Welcome to Ping 24 Updates, your daily dose of what's happening around the world. Subscribe my channel and press the bell icon for more updates. September 27, 2025. A date that will be remembered as the world teetered on the edge of catastrophe. As midnight strikes, the world holds its breath, waiting for what comes next. The world stands on the edge of a crisis not seen in decades. Streets that once bustled with life now lie eerily silent, as people everywhere anxiously await updates. Newsrooms buzz with urgency, and families gather, glued to their screens, hoping for reassurance that never comes. Tensions between Russia and the West have erupted into open hostility. In a dramatic escalation, Moscow has declared recent NATO and EU actions as outright acts of war. The diplomatic language of the past has given way to threats and ultimatums, as leaders on both sides exchange accusations and warnings. Russian military provocations now stretch from Europe's skies to North America's shores. Fighter jets roar across borders, warships patrol contested waters, and radar screens light up with activity. The sense of danger is palpable as every maneuver is scrutinized for signs of escalation. The U.S. military has called an emergency meeting of its top brass, underscoring the gravity of the situation. Inside the Pentagon, generals and advisors work through the night, analyzing intelligence and preparing for every possible scenario. The stakes could not be higher. The world watches as nuclear-armed powers inch closer to direct confrontation. The specter of nuclear war, once thought a relic of the past, now looms large. Every decision, every word, carries the weight of unimaginable consequences. At the heart of this crisis lies Russia's bold and unprecedented challenges to NATO's security. The Kremlin's actions are not just symbolic, they are a direct test of the alliance's unity and resolve. These are not isolated incidents. They're a coordinated campaign to test the West's resolve. Fighter jets violate airspace with increasing frequency, forcing rapid responses from NATO pilots. Each encounter brings the world one step closer to the brink. In space, satellites maneuver menacingly in orbit, shadowing each other in a silent, high-stakes game. Cyber units on both sides brace for digital attacks that could cripple communications or infrastructure in an instant. The Kremlin's message is clear: it's willing to risk everything to assert its power. President Putin, flanked by his top generals, delivers statements that leave no doubt. Russia is prepared to escalate, no matter the cost. The question now hangs heavy in the air. Will NATO call Russia's bluff, and at what cost? Leaders debate behind closed doors, weighing the risks of action versus inaction, knowing that a single misstep could trigger disaster. This is not just Europe's problem. The tremors are global. From Asia to the Americas, governments and citizens alike brace for the fallout. Stock markets plunge and international organizations scramble to mediate, but the world remains on edge. A single miscalculation could ignite a devastating war, the likes of which the world has not seen in generations. Soldiers prepare for the worst, while families seek shelter and hope for peace. Humanitarian agencies ready themselves for the unthinkable. Tonight, we break down the provocations, the Pentagon's response, and the intelligence assessments shaping every decision. We'll examine the strategies, the risks, and the possible outcomes of this unprecedented standoff. The choices facing NATO are stark and fraught with peril. Every option carries consequences that will echo for years to come. The alliance must decide: stand firm and risk escalation, or seek compromise and risk emboldening aggression. The decisions made now will shape the future of global security. As dawn breaks over the world's capitals, the hope for peace endures, but so does the fear of war. The world waits, watching, as history is written in real time. The world is on edge as a new crisis unfolds, one that has its roots in a series of bold and calculated moves by Russia. This crisis is not a sudden eruption, but rather the result of a deliberate and escalating campaign orchestrated by Moscow. Over the past months, tensions have been steadily rising, with each new incident adding fuel to an already volatile situation. At the heart of this crisis lies a calculated Russian escalation. Behind closed doors in the Kremlin, senior officials and military strategists have been meticulously planning maneuvers designed to challenge the West and test the resolve of NATO. These are not random acts, but part of a broader strategy to assert Russian power and influence on the global stage. Russian drones and fighter jets have repeatedly violated NATO airspace, targeting countries like Poland, Estonia, Romania, and Latvia. These incursions are not isolated incidents, they are coordinated efforts to probe the defenses of NATO's eastern flank. Each violation sends a clear message: Russia is willing to push boundaries and challenge the status quo regardless of the risks. Each incursion is a deliberate test of NATO's defenses and unity. While Moscow publicly denies any hostile intent, the pattern of these actions is unmistakable. The repeated breaches force NATO to respond, keeping its forces on constant alert and straining the alliance's resources. The Kremlin's denials ring hollow in the face of mounting evidence and growing international concern. The confrontation is not limited to the skies above Europe. In space, Russian military satellites have begun to threaten critical US assets, opening a new and dangerous front in this standoff. These satellites have the capability to disrupt communications, navigation, and surveillance systems, the very backbone of NATO's military operations. The risk of a space-based conflict is now a real and growing concern among defense experts. The provocations have even extended to North America. US and Canadian fighter jets have been forced to scramble on multiple occasions to intercept Russian planes approaching the airspace off Alaska. These encounters are tense and dangerous, raising the stakes and increasing the risk of a miscalculation that could spiral out of control. Russia's strategy is clear: apply pressure on multiple fronts, stretch NATO thin, and increase the risk of a mistake. By creating flashpoints across Europe and North America, Moscow hopes to overwhelm NATO's ability to respond effectively. The more fronts NATO must defend, the greater the chance that a single error could trigger a much larger conflict. Experts see these maneuvers as both a search for weakness and a form of psychological warfare. By keeping NATO on edge, Russia aims to distract, divide, and destabilize the alliance from within. The constant pressure is designed to sow doubt among member states, making it harder for them to present a united front in the face of aggression. It's a high-stakes game of chicken, one where the consequences of a wrong move could be catastrophic. The world is watching, holding its breath, as leaders weigh their options and militaries stand ready. The question now is not just how long this standoff can last, but whether restraint will prevail or give way to open retaliation. In this dangerous moment, the stakes could not be higher, and the outcome remains uncertain. Moscow's rhetoric has reached a dangerous new level. Russian officials now claim NATO and EU actions amount to a declaration of war. This is the Kremlin's most direct threat since invading Ukraine. By framing Western support for Kyiv as aggression, Russia seeks to justify future attacks as defensive. This narrative lowers the threshold for direct conflict. Any incident could trigger massive retaliation. NATO's every move is now cast as an act of war by Moscow. The Kremlin uses this to rally domestic support and tighten its grip on power. It's a classic authoritarian tactic: create an external enemy to unite the nation. The danger is real. This rhetoric could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. In Washington, the Pentagon's response is swift and serious. The U.S. Secretary of Defense has convened an emergency meeting of top military leaders from across the globe. This is no routine briefing. It signals the U.S. is preparing for major contingencies. The agenda: how to respond to Russian provocations, reinforce Europe, and avoid escalation. The meeting moves the U.S. from deterrence to active preparation. It sends a message: America is ready to defend its allies. But such moves risk feeding Moscow's narrative of Western aggression. The Pentagon must prepare for the worst, without making it inevitable. Russia's provocations are global and relentless. Drones over France, jets near Denmark, repeated violations in Latvia, each a calculated test of NATO's defenses. These are not random. They're psychological warfare, designed to intimidate and probe for weakness. Even North America isn't immune. Russian aircraft near Alaska force US and Canadian jets to respond. The goal: stretch NATO thin, sow confusion, and remind the West of Russia's reach. It's a campaign of pressure, where a single misstep could spark disaster. The alliance faces a constant grinding test of its resolve. NATO now faces a perilous question: how to respond to relentless Russian incursions. Some argue for a tougher stance, shooting down drones or jets to re-establish deterrence. Others warn this could trigger a catastrophic war with a nuclear power. The alliance walks a tightrope: act too weak, invite more aggression; act too strong, risk escalation. Denmark urges restraint. Poland and the Baltics push for a firmer line. The debate exposes deep divisions within NATO. The stakes: nothing less than war or peace in Europe. NATO's internal debate reveals cracks in the alliance. There's no consensus on what constitutes a red line. Eastern members like Poland and the Baltics demand tougher rules of engagement. For them, the threat is existential. They want clear triggers for force. Western Europe and the US urge caution, fearing escalation with a nuclear Russia. They prefer a mix of military readiness and diplomacy. Russia exploits these divisions, testing NATO's unity with every provocation. The challenge to deter Moscow without stumbling into war. The alliance's greatest test is not just external, it's maintaining internal unity. Only a common position can prevent disaster. The world waits to see if NATO can hold together under pressure. While NATO's leaders gather around polished tables, debating strategy and weighing the risks, Ukraine is not waiting for consensus. Instead, it is taking bold, decisive action on the ground, refusing to be paralyzed by indecision or bureaucracy. As the world watches, Ukraine's resolve stands in stark contrast to the cautious deliberations in Western capitals. Ukrainian forces have managed to shoot down some of Russia's most advanced fighter jets, demonstrating both skill and determination. But their reach doesn't stop at the front lines. Using innovative tactics and Western-supplied technology, they have struck deep inside Russian territory, targeting vital oil refineries and fuel depots. These daring drone attacks have set oil facilities ablaze, disrupting Russia's logistics and sending shockwaves through its economy. Each successful strike is more than just a tactical win, it's a powerful boost to Ukrainian morale. On the front lines, soldiers celebrate these victories, knowing they are making a real impact. The destruction of Russian military equipment not only weakens the enemy, but also inspires hope and determination among Ukrainian troops and civilians alike. For the first time, ordinary Russians are feeling the direct consequences of the war. Explosions and damaged buildings in their own cities shatter the illusion of distance and safety that the Kremlin has tried to maintain. News reports and social media are filled with images of destruction, challenging the official narrative and forcing many to confront the harsh realities of the conflict. By striking back so effectively, Ukraine is not only defending itself but also taking on some of the burden that might otherwise fall to NATO. Every Russian setback on the battlefield is a win for the alliance, achieved without direct Western involvement. Ukrainian troops, now equipped with advanced Western weapons, are proving that they can hold their own against a much larger adversary. However, these battlefield victories come with significant risks. An embarrassed and cornered Russia may respond in unpredictable and dangerous ways. The Kremlin, facing internal pressure and international humiliation, could escalate the conflict, seeking to reassert its dominance through more aggressive tactics or even unconventional means. This puts the West in a difficult position. On one hand, there is a clear need to arm Ukraine with the tools it needs to defend itself and push back against aggression. On the other, every new shipment of advanced weaponry risks provoking a massive escalation, potentially drawing NATO and Russia closer to direct confrontation. In Moscow, each new Western weapon delivered to Ukraine is viewed as a direct challenge, another step toward open conflict. Russian officials warn of consequences, and military parades are staged to project strength and resolve, both to their own people and to the world. The balance the West must strike is incredibly delicate. Support for Ukraine must be strong enough to make a difference, but measured enough to avoid reckless escalation. Behind closed doors, diplomats and military advisors weigh every decision, knowing that the stakes could not be higher. The line between deterrence and provocation grows ever thinner. With each new development, the risk of miscalculation increases, and the world watches anxiously, hoping that support for Ukraine will bring peace, not a wider war. Europe faces its most dangerous moment since World War II. The risk of miscalculation is terrifyingly high. A single incident could ignite a continent-wide war. The Pentagon's emergency meeting and NATO's next moves will be critical. Will the alliance show unity and set a clear red line, or will division embolden the Kremlin? The future depends on credible deterrence and open channels for diplomacy. The West must be strong but also seek de-escalation. The best case, Russia backs down and a tense peace holds. The worst escalation spirals into direct conflict. Most likely the world enters a new era of extreme tension, a 21st century Cold War. The peace and security of a generation hang in the balance.